Welcome inside the WB Mason Coaches Report. Ryan Mayer here with the Hofstra Pride baseball coach, John Russo. And coach, you had 4 games this past week, 1 a weekday game against Marist, and then 3 down at Delaware State. Before we get to the weekend, just quickly want to talk about Marist. You win 9-7, and no starter pitched in the game for you. It was mainly bullpen guys. Now, was that something by design you thought of doing, just as a chance to give those starters a rest and get the bullpen guys some work?
You know, we're really getting thin right now on the starters. With we lost David now for the season with Tommy John, and we went with Barb's this past Friday, and we're just trying to figure out that midweek situation right now. We've got another one coming up, Albany, and 2 next weekend, and our relievers have been struggling a little bit too now. Berg and Cody got a little bit cold there for a little bit, and so I thought it was a good time to get them innings and get them some confidence. Schreiber was coming off a bad midweek. The week before against Manhattan had some nice innings, and we're trying to get that whole deal settled. And I think what we're going to do from here on out is just move Schilt into that spot and leave him there, leave it for his 1 game a week. It's been a tough thing to find where to pitch him right now, and I think we're going to leave Schilt right there right now.
Now, for the weekend series against Delaware State, you had 3 games down there, a full weekend set against them. Just what are your overall thoughts on the weekend first before we get into game by game?
Going into Delaware State, the coaches knew what type of weekend we were in for. They're in first place in the MEAC. They had some really nice wins against Delaware, Cornell, who's a 13-4 team. And, we saw on paper their stats were really good. They're getting hit by pitches a lot. They're on base a lot. And I didn't think there was anything I could sell our team to get them removed from them being Delaware State. If it was Florida State, they would have taken them for real. Their conference opponent, they take them. I don't think they gave Delaware State the respect they were due. And man, they came in, and I've got to think it's one of the toughest weekends we've had this year, with the team being as well coached and prepared for our style as any team we played. And it showed on the stats, only like 4 or 5 bags on the weekend, and they just did a really nice job of shutting us down and attacking us on offense.
Now, the first game on Friday, obviously, as you mentioned, Andrew Barbarino getting the start, seeming to be the guy that is going to come out of the pen and take over that third starter spot for you guys. He struggled a little bit. Obviously, coming out of the pen, it's tough for a reliever to stretch out a little bit, only going 2 1/3. What did you see from him that you thought was good, and what maybe does he need to work on in that transition from bullpen to starter?
Barb's, out of the bullpen the week before against ODU, and he really attacked hitters and worked off his fastball. And, I thought, he threw a lot of fastball strikes early in that game and was getting away with it. And, he just all fell to pieces. He had an error of himself. He didn't feel his position, which was, really tough. And, we were expecting more of Barb's, to be honest, a 4 innings type start. And, I think he'd be the first to admit he just didn't have his best stuff. And, it set us off to a bad start for that game, because we talk about, our starting pitching setting the tempo for the game. Where people would think it's our offense, it's not. It's the starting pitching, it's the defense. Those are our 2 brands, and it just set us off to a real bad start.
Now, in terms of the offense, obviously Delaware State puts up 10 runs, but you guys really not able to get going in that first game of the series. What did you see from their pitching staff that allowed them to be so effective?
They had a 3-year guy, I can't remember his first name, his last name was Elliott, that he just had really good numbers, a low 2 ERA, really kept us off speed, a conference-type pitcher. And, I don't think our guys were expecting that. We only scored 2 runs. We had a couple of chances to really cash in, but we didn't. And, to be honest, I don't remember a game this year where we were just whipped as much as we were on Friday. We were whipped on defense. We got outplayed, which doesn't happen to us. We got whipped on the mound. Their guy threw a lot better than us, and their offense was obviously a lot better than ours. And, we definitely talked about it Friday night at the hotel and addressed some things that we needed to play a lot better.
Now, obviously, you move forward into Saturday. You still have 2 games left against Delaware State. Saturday, you get a very good start out of John Tiedemann. Through the first 6 innings, only allowed 1 hit. Gets into a spot of trouble in the 7th, but that was after a long inning for you guys on the offensive end. How happy were you to see 7 innings from John in the start that he gave you?
We needed it. It was at a huge time. With David leaving the starting rotation and John not being as settled in as what we'd like, you're thinking, 2 of your 3 conference guys could be down. And, John really rebounded him, and Coach Colaswano made a big adjustment. midweek in his delivery, which helped with his location. He went 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, and it's just like what you said, that long inning, he gave up 3 bad runs in the 7th where, it was 7 shutouts and he was completely dominating. And, that's happened to him a few times. I think his numbers are very misleading of how well he's pitched in some games. He's had 5 shutouts and then a 4-run 6. He's had that twice. And, so then you add up that's 10 runs after 5 shutouts 3 times. And, he's done really well, but man, he was like a #1 type starter on Saturday, and that's what we needed.
And you also see a guy who what you were a little bit worried about in terms of what you would see from him the rest of the season, Jared Rogers, after he gets hurt, comes out, throws 2 solid innings, shutout innings for you guys to lock down an 11-3 win. How impressed were you with his pitching performance?
Man, really impressed. It was probably the hardest velocity we'd seen of him, since he's been here. He had a lot of confidence, had a real edge to him, came out there very aggressive, and really reminded us of Jared Rogers. That's when he's going really strong. And I was worried, thinking he might come out. We gave him a big cushion to come into, and he might be feeling his way about it, and he wasn't. He was really attacking and, just really gung-ho, full steam ahead. And, we're probably going to start him this Friday night, in the first game of conference against Georgia State after that outing, because, with that type of moxie and leadership that he had, he's that Friday night type guy.
Now, obviously, your offense making a big turnaround in the second game, putting up 11 runs. What adjustments did you talk about to the team to make in terms of going from that Friday game into Saturday and maybe taking the pitching a little bit more seriously?
We felt like on Friday they really attacked us with fastballs early, and we were really passive to begin with. And still in, Saturday's game was a 1-1 game into the 6th. And their guy had a really good game, and then Brian Verbitsky got on a walk, and they had a throwaway. And, we get the third, right center hits the ball off of him, and then it seemed to landslide. And that's what our offense produces. Even though we don't get stolen bases a lot, we cause a lot of pressure. And, they paid a lot of attention to our running game, but, over the course of 6, 7, 8 innings, it just wears on you. As many, let's say if the kid was at around 80 pitches in the 6th inning, he also had about 35 pickoff throws. So, he's 115 throws into the game, and he just wore down. And then we were able to strike for a bunch of runs. And, you got to, listen, if you're going to stop us running, you got to still be able to throw over the plate. And the thing that they were doing in Game 1 and Game 2 was we just didn't really have any people on to have any chances to run. I mean, they just really shut us down early, and, once we were able to get to them, we got to them pretty good.
Now you move forward to Sunday, obviously looking to come away with 2 out of 3 from the series. You get a solid start from Dave Jesh. He goes 5 innings, but what was behind the decision to take him out there? Was it more of a matchup thing? Did you see him getting a little bit tired after the 5th, or what happened?
I think his numbers were very misleading yesterday. Like his stat line turned out okay, but I think it was the worst stuff we'd seen him have all year. And he really struggled. I think if you look back, his balls to strikes were right around 50%. He usually works at 65 or higher, and just didn't have a good feel on the mound is what he usually does. And my thought is once again is we're getting very thin in our starting, and it is a non-con game, and he just didn't look right. And so it was a tie game. I felt confident with what we had left in the pen at that time. You still hadn't thrown Verbitsky, you hadn't thrown Berg, you had Norman. I thought we had enough to compete with to be able to take David out of the game and not risk injury, because he just didn't look right.
And then this was a tight game as well. You go into the 9th inning, tied at 3. Offense explodes again. 8 runs in the 9th inning. You put up another crooked number on the scoreboard. What was the change in the 9th inning? Again, just wearing down the pitchers, thinking about your running game?
Well, they brought in that closer guy because it was a closer game on Friday, and so we'd already seen him one time, and he came in the 8th inning and got a big strikeout of right center with the bases loaded. But then, we had the top of the order up, and Nyman, had a great day. He leads off with a single. We bunt him over, and Danny Poma had as good a weekend as what he usually has, and he drove him in. And it seemed after we went ahead, their shoulders kind of slumped a little bit, and we just kept striking, and we're a big momentum team. I mean, usually if we strike for 2 or 3, we can get to 5 in a hurry. And we really swung the bats well. We ran off 8 consecutive hits, and I don't know how many times we're going to do that, but I mean, we really swung. I think 3 doubles, a home run, a pinch hit by Chris Yardo as we're calling him. 2 home runs in 2 weekends, and hit a no-doubter off the bench, and it was a lot of fun, and the guys really took it serious, and like you said, all 3 games were really competitive.
Now, obviously, one of the big storylines coming out of the weekend is the reemergence of Kenny Jackson, and that's been over the past couple of games, really starting to see the ball well and put the bat on the ball the way he was towards the end of last season. What changes have you seen from him, or what have you talked to him about that has really sparked this streak?
The big thing we did with Kenny, and Kenny will agree to this 100%, was I don't think there was stuff, technically wrong with him. He just wasn't catching any breaks. He was hitting a lot of balls at him, and it was more confidence-wise. And you got to give him a lot of credit. He battled through his confidence and stayed with what he did. And we talk a lot about major league players. They're always going to be as good as the back of their baseball cards. Their numbers are going to. And I thought if we stuck by Kenny, left him in the 5-hole, even though he was hitting about 180 at the time, that his numbers would come around because he'd been swinging really well. And he's getting a bunch of hits. He's gotten a few bloopers to fall, and so those are making up for the line drives that he hit at people early. And it just really coming around. And with the game on the line, Kenny's in the top 3 guys we'd love to have at bat, and we love him protect and hammer. And he's just as equal lefty and righty, and he's just really had a good weekend, and it's good to see the bats fall for him. The hits fall for him now, and he had a real nice weekend.
Now you have 4 games again coming up this week. Albany, and now the conference game at home, and then a 3-game set against Georgia State coming up this weekend. How tough is it now? Now that you're down some guys in terms of the pitching rotation, to try and make sure that nobody's getting overworked when you have 4 games in a week?
You know what, the biggest part of this early season that was the hardest, I think, and it took us till about last week to figure this out, was being on the road. I mean, we were on the road 22 of 25 games, and being in that, we just never really got into a good sequence. And I think in the previous 5 games, you saw our pitching really start to fall off. Well, part of that was we didn't stay into a pattern, a routine, because we're traveling on Thursdays. Friday, Saturday, Sunday were the games. There just wasn't a routine. So last week, we got back into our routine on Tuesday, Wednesday, even the Marist game, because that was a bullpen day for the relievers, and then back to Thursday, conditioning. And, we got them back into a routine, and I'm hoping with this, 5-game home stretch, we can stay to that routine and really get ready for, Albany and Georgia State mostly. And, I like where we're at now. It seemed to really work out with our bullpen this weekend. I really liked where Verbitsky was at, and Cody was great, and Berg looked good in his inning. And, a couple guys, Schreiber didn't even have a chance to throw, and he threw really well last week. And, so I have a lot of confidence in what we're going to be able to offer, the future opponents. And now that we're at home and a little bit less of a schedule, if they can stay to the routine, I feel like we're going to be really strong.
Now, one guy that we didn't see this past weekend that much was Dalton Brulug. A little bit of just rest for him in a non-conference series.
Yeah, I was a bad coach yesterday. We've been resting him for a better part of almost 2 weeks, and, thought he'd be full health for Georgia State. And, he was released to probably play last week, but since it was non-conference games, he has a bone bruise on his knuckle from getting hit on a pitch at George Mason, and then it came back, he jammed it again, and we thought it was broke, and it's just a deep bone bruise, and he's having a hard time squeezing the bat. And on Sunday, he thought he was 100%, and so I said, listen, we'll only use you if we need you. And it was second and third, and a game-winning run at third base, and so we brought up Dalton to hit, and he gets hit by a 1-2 fastball in the hand again. So that's as bad a coaching as I've probably done this year. He swears to me he's not hurt, but we'll check today and see how he is tomorrow. We'll debate it on Wednesday whether to play him or not, but I'm sure he'll play against Georgia State this weekend.
Now, finally, with these 4 games coming up, what are your expectations for this week, and then moving forward a little bit throughout the rest of the schedule now that you've gotten settled and you're getting back to playing some games at home?
I'm real excited about this Schilt thing, on Wednesday. I think John had as good a stuff as what we've seen last year. He just came into a tough situation, a tie game, a bleeder up the middle that a guy gets a hit, a strikeout that the ball ricochets away, gets that guy on base, and a tough walk where I thought a few of those pitches could have been strikes, and send his bases loaded, he's out. And so I talked to John afterwards, and we're just going to give him his own game and let him just get into a routine. And I think that's going to be really tough to beat in the midweek if we can get a 5 or 6 inning type start for him, because we definitely have enough bullpen to shut down the rest. And basically our goal is the same every weekend, is try to do our best to win 2 or 3, protect home, and You know, we've had a lot of trouble with Georgia State in the 3 years I've been here. We were 0-9 against them, and you know, I see Brandon Williams still in the lineup. I feel like he's like a 6th-year senior, and you know, Joey Wood, a first baseman that's hits, and they have a good Friday night guy, Justin Malone, that's been their closer in the past. That's been really good, and they've been moving their closer, Jake Dyer, back and forth between starting. And you know, no team, you know, in my 3 years here has dominated us as much as Georgia State has. I mean, I don't even remember if we've been close in a game. So you know, it's going to be a really tough opponent this weekend, and you know, I think we'll give it our best shot. And the one thing, you know, we usually bring pretty good effort, and you know, I think the home fans will like to see it.
All right, well, Coach, thanks for joining me again this week inside the WB Mason Coaches Report. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Thank you for having me.